In my political evolution, I've noticed that one of the big things about both the conservatives and the Ron Paul movement, and especially the Tea Party movement, is that they like to use both strawmen and vilification. Democrats, in the attempt to be civil and ensure the debate is open for discussion, have in the recent decade avoided these tactics and tend to lose. Badly. When I first discovered Ron Paul, I found his ideas to be extremely compelling. They were complex and, well, very thought out. However, he painted the other side as just wanting to take your money, and in fact gave no indication of what the other side thought. Unless you look at both sides, you can't compare and contrast and find the best system. I've spoken with both communists and capitalists on both sides of the spectrum, and they both oversimplify the other's viewpoint into a caricature, and are both horrified that anyone would agree with their opposing viewpoint. The thing is, Marx, Adam Smith, James Maynard Keynes, and von Mises make legitimate and well-thought-out arguments on the economy. Only people with a scientific and unbiased view of economics, and probably with a degree in it, can really properly compare and contrast them. I unfortunately do not, but I have actually looked at all sides of the argument now, as far as I know. When I was a creationist, I was given a comical view of what Darwin believed, and God done it sounded way more logical. As a Ron Pauler, I was given a tiny and out-of-context snippet of something Keynes said about how in a recession it's better to pay a person to dig a ditch and fill it back up just to get the economy moving. This was, of course, an exaggerated joke he was making, but the truth was based on sound calculation. I, of course, was given no indication as to what Marx actually believed and how he came to his conclusions. I have talked to a wide range of people here on YouTube, from anti-statists to conservatives to communists, and they all have well-thought-out arguments that appear logical. Unfortunately, they all have strawman arguments against the opposing side. The liberal idea is to take all of these arguments and look at them and figure out the best systems. Sadly, a lot of liberal politicians don't understand this and don't know all the sides, as most of them aren't economists. So there is a wide range of gradients between conservatives and socialists in the Democratic Party, Obama being probably the most moderate of the group. I have had a few people in my comments actually make good arguments against taxing the rich. One of the reasons why I'm making videos for heavily taxing the rich is because there is such an anti-tax mindset, especially among Tea Partiers, but even among the mainstream. There are difficulties with taxing the rich that do need to be addressed and are taken into account by economists when deciding how to tax. One is the argument that businesses will leave the country if taxes go down. While there is some truth to this, the Republicans recently had an online voting measure on what their voters cared about the most. The number 2 suggestion, besides legalize pot, was to give tax breaks to businesses who brought jobs into the U.S. and raise taxes on businesses who exported its labor and outsourced. The Republicans, of course, totally ignored it and went with tax cuts, abortion, and gay marriage. The Dems jumped on it and tried passing it in Congress, but like always, the Republicans blocked it. Another problem is that most rich people get most of their money from stock portfolios and not from income like ours. Taxing the stocks would hurt the poorer person who is investing for retirement and might discourage investment into the market. Obama actually passed a bill that would reduce taxation on investment into small businesses. The third problem is that the rich can spend thousands to save millions on expensive accountants and loopholes. In some countries, there is a rich tax that taxes not their income, but their entire fortune. When this occurs, rich people can of course use offshore accounts to hide how much they actually have. These are all problems with taxing the rich, and ones which need to be addressed. This does not mean, however, that taxing the rich more, when done right, doesn't raise the amount returned to the worker. Democrats and liberals tend to suck at explaining their positions and educating people on the reasons behind their ideas and policies. They're kind of like scientists in that they're too busy doing their work, or their intern, depending on the politician, to get their message in a concise and logical way. On top of that, both science and all points of view require a lot of time and prior education, and thanks to poor education, it makes sound bites more believable than lectures. I'll next try to explain both sides of the currency debate in a very short time. Back at the end of the 19th century, there was a major argument between the three currency groups: free silver, the gold standard, and the Lincoln-introduced greenback. The Wizard of Oz was written as an allegory for this debate, actually. Follow the yellow brick road, gold. Free silver was something America had a lot of, and silver miners loved this idea because they could take their silver and get it cast, and 1 ounce of silver would be worth $1. The downside of this is that if there was a lot of silver coins in circulation, inflation would increase at a rapid level. The gold standard had its own problems, which showed up when we switched to it, and we had a market crash like clockwork every 20 years as gold was hoarded and speculation boomed. The greenback was actually a legal loophole Lincoln found in the Constitution to pay for the Civil War. He could only make money of gold and silver, but legally he could print treasury bonds. They then passed a law so that these treasury bonds could be used to pay taxes, just like gold and silver, and the greenback became a form of currency. When the Federal Reserve came around, switching it over to just the greenback would have been fine, but at the time, people neither trusted the banks nor the government, so the privately owned, bank-run Federal Reserve was born, which involved the Treasury Department to buy reserve notes with U.S. bonds from the privately owned Federal Reserve on interest. As you may know, I am more trusting of the government than banks, and I can't figure out what constitutionality allows the Fed to exist the way it is, so I would prefer to get rid of the Federal Reserve and allow the Treasury to be in charge of the currency, perhaps under an appointed body like the Supreme Court, or a chairman as the Fed has now. One of the major reasons for the invention of the Federal Reserve was because of currencies in the international markets. This is really not discussed at all by Ron Paulers, and they're probably unaware of it. A factor involved with the Great Depression is that European markets had fiat currency systems, and they could deflate their money at whim. This sounds awful from a national and personal standpoint, but from an international standpoint, it's great, because by deflating your currency, you now have greater trade power. More money comes into your country, and more jobs are created. This is exactly what China is doing right now. The nations with strong currencies have weaker trade, and China is artificially keeping the yuan at one price while everyone else's money gets strong and trade weakens. If all nations had not had fiat currency, it wouldn't have been a problem for the U.S. not to have fiat currency either. But that's the thing. When it comes to economics and government, one has to think internationally as well as domestically. Fiat currency is a financial defense weapon. Anti-statists argue that no government would be the best, and I would possibly agree, except that the only types we have as precedent are the ancient Iceland and Ireland. And so long as they stayed fairly cloistered from the rest of the world, they were just fine. However, once they opened up to trade, many chieftains were corrupted when they saw the money and power that the emperors and kings, especially the Roman Empire, had, and became monarchs themselves. If a system can't defend itself internationally, then it isn't a system that will work. If I play Civilizations and I work hard at making a peaceful and learned society and get invaded because I didn't maintain a military or some other form of defense, I have no one to blame but myself. You go with a system that works, not with one you like, or you will fail. There are problems with all systems. Marx knew quite well that there were limiting problems with communism and stated that. Adam Smith, the father of free market economics, said that his system would only work properly in a perfect democracy, as politicians could be bribed or have their elections paid for. I have people in my comments saying, of course capitalism doesn't work right now, we don't have a true free market. Well, as soon as you can create a perfect democracy, I would love to give your idea a try. They also say, we need to give it a chance, no one has ever tried it. Well, in science, we go on precedent, and we don't change quickly or radically. No government is stupid enough to try and change years of precedent that has worked fairly well so far just to try an experiment that would affect 300 million people. I'm not an economist, and probably neither are you, and that's the problem. If a system of government or economics is well presented to us without opposing viewpoints, it's probably pretty complex and seems logical. Economics and politics are more like a religion to us, and unless we can see all sides, we don't change. Sadly, seeing all the sides requires a lot of research or a degree in political science, history, and economics. Most people barely take the time to learn their own party's reasons for why they believe their ideas are the best. Some learn their party's doctrine like the Bible and don't have a clue about the other sides. I want people to listen to what Ron Paul, von Mises, Marx, Keynes, and others have to say, and then you can make an informed decision. Don't assume that your position is the correct one just because your group tells you what the other side believes and why it believes it. In my latest video, I've been accused of strawmanning. Strawmanning is when you state your opponent's position, comically at best, and then easily defeat it. I was telling my position, as I have already done a very good job in several other videos stating what the other side believe. I thank everyone for not unsubscribing and sticking this out. For a few videos, I had just as many people unsubscribe to me as subscribe because I was no longer of their political and economic religion. After the election, I will be taking a very long break from discussing politics and the economy, and wouldn't be doing so now except I feel the election is very important. Thank you for the time and the debate on my comments. It's fun seeing a communist and a capitalist debate with each other, especially when they have little idea of the other person's views.